and Tessa Linden. Today I'm joined by Bryan Caporicci of everything. Bryan, you wear many hats, so why don't you give us an introduction for those of the group members that maybe don't know who you are and quite about your background in photography.
Yeah, for sure. Thank you, Tessa. Yeah, I've been a professional wedding and portrait shooter here in Niagara for 15 years. And the funny thing is that I got into photography as a business person first, and then I figured out that I wanted to be a photographer. I actually, long story short, I had my business registered. I was running with like the actual structure of the business, and then the next day I walked into Henry's and I said, "Hey, so I'm a photographer with a business, so I need to buy a camera. So tell me what I should buy." So I kind of went at it the opposite direction, because most photographers get into photography because they love photography, and then they realize, holy cow, I have to run a business doing this thing.
Yeah.
But that perspective for me, because I've always approached it as an entrepreneur first and as a business person first, has given me the context of being able to look at things as being a business person and not as a creative. And so over the last 15 years, I've evolved in my career as a wedding and portrait photographer,
Mhm.
and I teach now. I teach business to photographers. Have for probably 10 years. Wrote a book called Pricing for Profit 12 years ago. Have taught in that concept, and I've built spreadsheets and calculators and the whole nine yards. And we've helped hundreds of thousands of photographers with those principles on like how to price, and both from the tactical numbers side, but then also from the mindset and fears and insecurities,
Mhm.
and those like icky things that come up when we start attaching numbers to the work that we do. And then I'm also the CEO and founder of Sprout Studio, so a software company for photographers.
Yeah.
So that's kind of like the 90 seconder on who I am and why I'm here hanging out with people.
Yeah, well, we know there's a lot more to it, but yes, we are short on time.
Yeah, it's all good.
So you're bringing your pricing for profit over to the APNPI Academy, and you'll be teaching that course. What's a common mistake that you see new and seasoned photographers making when it comes to pricing?
I think the biggest mistake that photographers make in pricing is they don't factor in their time when they start thinking about the inputs for pricing, and we'll talk in the course at length about how to actually calculate your pricing, because I think just arriving at the number is sometimes a bit of like a black art, right? Like we don't know how to like actually approach that. So we'll walk through. Don't worry, we're going to give you the exact steps, like one,
That's
two, three, on
great.
exactly how to do it. It's going to be very, very easy. But most of the time, Tessa, I find photographers, like, even if they are thinking of costs, or if they are thinking of calculating their numbers in a really meaningful way, they always just forget about their own time. They're like, well, the print cost me, $10 from the lab, and its shipping was this. And okay, so I'll multiply that by four, because Brian says four is a good number to multiply by. And then that's it. They'll like land at that number. And it's like, yeah, but what about like the 5 minutes that you spent for this, and the 10 minutes that you spent for this, and the 3 minutes that you spent? Like, if we don't value our time, how do we expect our clients to? And so I think that's probably one of the biggest mistakes that photographers make, is they don't consider their time as being valuable, at least when it relates to their pricing.
Yeah, no, I agree. And I think possibly, as you mentioned before, so many people started out as a hobby
Yeah.
and then decide to transition. And I think that's part of it too, is that
Yeah.
mindset of, well, I just love it. I love it so much. And yeah. So depending on location and specialty, this industry can be quite saturated, right? Would you say that what would you say to photographers who are scared to raise their prices for fear of pricing themselves out of the market?
I think there's a common misconception when we talk about the idea
Mhm.
of raising prices. And I think that's where a lot of us, without thinking of, business first and thinking of making smart, strategic, calculated business decisions, um, without doing that, we interpret the notion of like raising prices as like, well, pricing ourselves out of the market. In my opinion, raising prices is more a methodical, calculated approach to just moving along the path of where you are to where you want to get to. And so that doesn't mean that it has to be big, massive, scary changes. I actually recommend and teach doing smaller changes, because when you do smaller changes, it's scalable. A, for your photography business, you don't have to all of a sudden be serving a different market, because
Right.
as soon as you go from one price in a big way, if you go from one price market to a different price, you go from $250 for a session to $1,250 for a
Right.
session. Now you're now serving a completely different kind of market. And so in doing that, like, your whole being and branding and business and customer experience needs to completely change overnight with that with that pricing change. And
Yeah.
that's not an easy thing for most of us to do. So that's why I don't recommend and advocate for those big jumps, because the other side, con to it, is that you're going to lose referrals, you're going to lose repeat clients, you're going to have a lot of negative pushback from your existing clientele on that. Because if someone just booked you for maternity and it was $250 and they call you for newborn, you're like, oh yeah, it's 1250. They're like, what happened to like where you were 3 months ago, right? So that's a scary place to be too. So I think the fear is real when you relate it to these big jumps. So instead, and we'll talk about this in the course, instead, let's be a little bit more strategic and a little bit more calculated and methodical about making really intentional, smaller incremental changes in our prices.
Hmm. Good advice. So another thing that was like the elephant in the room right now, I feel like photography has taken a big hit this last year, right? We've seen something we've never seen before in our lifetimes. What do you see photographers who are successfully emerging from this doing?
There's a few things.
Notice anything? I
Yeah,
know you're involved in the community at large
yeah,
more than just what you do here. So
for sure. Yeah.
you'd be a great person to ask this question for. It's really topical right now.
100%. I mean, obviously 2020, 2021, these are trying times for the humankind, let alone our industry. But I mean, obviously as well in
Yeah.
our industry, there's a few things, a few shifts that I see photographers who are succeeding embodying in their business. Number one, they're doubling down on relationships. I think relationships are going to be like super important. I mean, they have been for a long time, but I think that the pandemic has taught us that they're the most important currency that we have in our business and in our lives. Number two, photographers who are succeeding are focusing on being empathetic business owners. And I say that in the sense of they're acting for their clients. They're making decisions that serve their clients, as opposed to being in this state where we're selfish about ourselves as the artist and as the creative. It's another one of those things where, for years I've believed that photographers kind of had the whole business model wrong. I've been saying for so long that photographers are like, it's not about you. Like, you're not up on a stage. It's about serving clients. Like, we're in a service industry. And photographers that had this creative mindset of saying, well, it should be your honor and your privilege to work with me as the photographer. Like, you should be honored to hire me as a photographer. And it's funny to say it that way, but a lot of photographers have
But
tones, right?
I'm on Clubhouse. You're on Clubhouse, and I
Yeah.
kind of sometimes when you listen to those bigger names in the industry talk, you
Yeah.
still get that sense, even to this day. And I
Yeah.
know that, don't get me wrong, they bring a heck of a lot more to the table, and they are the total package. But there is still that sort of sense that it's
Yeah.
like my way or the highway, and
Yeah.
yeah.
And I think it's we need to start building experiences for our clients and building a business and offerings and services for our
Over and
clients that
above just the experience of being with. Wow.
yeah, but
Yeah.
then even beyond that, like, just thinking with so much more intent about, who they are and what they're going through and what they're thinking and feeling and doing and how we can add value into their lives. I think it's as simple as that. And we can only get to that state of mind. We can only get to that business model if we think empathetically and we start putting ourselves in their shoes. So I think that is another big shift. And then the third biggest shift that I see is photographers need to start thinking about diversifying their income. I think I talk a lot about this in the wedding photography space, but I'd argue that it's relevant in every space. I mean, in Ontario, for the longest time, we weren't able to be in front of clients. So if you're a newborn and or a maternity photographer and you depended on being in front of clients to make a living, you were going to all of a sudden find yourself in a difficult space, right? And so I think the more we can start thinking outside the box in terms of like other ways of earning revenue or other ways to serve or double down on existing clients. Like, how can I sell prints or do books or do albums or do gift certificates, or just like thinking more about how we market and how we sell and how we create experiences that folks would want to part with their money for. Those that are diversifying those offerings are the ones that are going to succeed.
Excellent, excellent advice, Bryan. Honestly, I like hearing that. That's fantastic. And for people that are going to be taking your course, what is it you're hoping that they're going to walk away with when it all's said and done?
Yeah, so there's a few things. Number one, they're gonna unquestionably know exactly how to price themselves. Like, that's gonna be really simple and really straightforward. Like the idea of, how do I put a number to the work that I create? How do I confidently slide that price sheet across the table and have my clients be okay with it?
Mhm.
They're gonna be confident in that. You're gonna be able to figure out what you should be charging. But that's the easy part, in my opinion. That's the part that, like, we're gonna get that over with in the first like 15 minutes, and then like that's it. Let's move on. Because once you know what you charge, once you have that price list in front of you and you know what your prices are and your packages are and your costs are and all those things, let's talk a little bit about some of the mindset that goes around that. So number one, some of those fears and insecurities that might stop us from charging what we want to be charging, what we know we should be charging. But even once we can get past that, how do we then make shifts, make changes? How do we talk about these things in a way that's going to have people wanting to part with their hard-earned money for the work that we create? So there's all these, and I always break down pricing into two different categories. One is tactical. Let's figure out the prices. Two is strategic. Let's figure out now how we have the right mindset, how we talk about it, how we approach it, how we communicate it, how we feel about it, how we internalize it, how it attaches itself to our confidence and our self-worth. So we're going to tackle both sides of those. And folks are going to be able to walk away with, a good level of confidence in their prices, and also knowing that they have a clear path on where they're going to go from here.
I love it, because I think you hit the nail on the head there. You're absolutely right. It is those two things. And I think there's a lot of photographers that will definitely benefit from not only just knowing where they should be in terms of their charging, but also that confidence piece, that just
Yeah.
going out there saying, this is what I'm worth and this is what I need to work for, and doing it. So I look forward to you for you to bring this to the APNPI audience. And I think it'll be a super valuable course. I encourage everybody to get in on it while they can. Any last words of wisdom for us today, Bryan? I know you've got a busy day ahead, but we are.
Yeah, no, I mean, it's this is a time, right now, if you're watching this live, we're in February here. This is a time where obviously things are still evolving and changing, and it's
Mhm.
different than like what normal was pre-pandemic normal.
Yeah.
You might find yourself with more time on your hands. You might find yourself with more space to work on your business instead of working in your business. I would encourage, this is a time when you should be kind of zooming out and looking down at your business from that 5 mile high perspective to say, how do I grow? Where do I go from here? Am I currently operating a business that's sustainable, a business that can give me long-term success and long-term growth? Now is the time to step out and work on your business instead of just working in your business. So give yourself the permission to go ahead and do that.
Love it. Always, always good to talk with you, Bryan. You always have something to think about, food for thought, and action, which I love too. So
Yeah, I'm looking forward to the course. This will
yeah.
be fun.
And now that you're in the group,
Yes.
people can
Well,
ask.
that's if I get approved. I mean, I've applied to be in the group, but I guess we'll
I
have to
have
see
a
if I
hunch.
get the
It's not, I
approval.
mean, I can't say because it's not within my powers,
Right.
but I'll put
You'll
in a
you'll
good
put in
word.
a good word for me.
I
Okay,
will.
got it.
I'll
Good.
definitely let them know that you're a guy who should maybe be in there.
Amazing.
All right. Thanks so much for joining us today, Bryan.
It's my
Really
pleasure. Thanks
appreciate
for
it.
having me.
Thank you.